online in YouTube. Damos inicio, Abriel, por favor. Compañeras, compañeros, muy buenas tardes. Para su servidor, José Guilmar Solorio Salgado, en mi carácter de subdirector de formación continua de la Subsecretaría de Educación Básica, me es muy grato el poder coincidir en este espacio con ustedes. En primer término, quiero enviar un saludo muy atento y dejarles también uno a la vez a ustedes, del licenciado Rogelio Tinoco García, nuestro subsecretario de Educación Básica. Él está enterado de esta actividad y en la mañana nos hizo favor de publicarlo precisamente en su Twitter. Y bueno, pues el privilegio de estar aquí reunidos en esta sala virtual, saludando también a mi compañera y amiga María Pureza Carvajal Juárez. Bienvenida, directora general de Educación Primaria. Gracias por acompañarnos, amiga Pureza.
Gracias, gracias, Guilmar. Aquí estoy.
Pues me da muchísimo gusto que como siempre estés interesada y acompañes este proceso en el tema de inglés. Yo lo que puedo decir al tiempo de haberles dejado el saludo de nuestro señor subsecretario es que, como saben todos ustedes, el proceso educativo es eminentemente social. Requiere de interacción en la cual se advierten diferencias relacionadas con personalidad, estilos de aprendizaje, ritmos de aprendizaje, contextos, intereses. Por tal motivo, el docente debe tomar estos elementos en cuenta dentro de su clase a fin de favorecer el logro de los aprendizajes. En esta ocasión, me es muy grato encontrarnos reunidos para participar en el webinar Embracing Multilevel Students in One Classroom, Practical Ideas for Implement Different Instruction. Acoger a estudiantes de varios niveles en el aula, ideas prácticas para implementar instruction, que será desarrollado por la maestra Ji Yong Ko, Maestra Ji Yun Ko, le transmito el saludo de nuestro señor subsecretario de Educación Básica y de nuestras compañeras y compañeros directores generales de Educación Básica, de preescolar, de primaria, de secundaria y de inclusión y fortalecimiento. Ji Yun-koo, de nacionalidad coreana, quien goza de reconocida experiencia en el campo de la enseñanza del inglés tras participar en diversos foros internacionales. Agradezco de manera especial a empresas EILT, quien se suma a los esfuerzos de la Subdirección de Formación Continua por desarrollar estas opciones de formación continua en beneficio de los docentes de educación básica del Estado de México. Una vez más, reconozco abiertamente el apoyo de los directores generales que he mencionado, en especial del universo que es más grande y que tiene a su cargo la maestra María Pureza Carvajal Juárez y que está aquí presente, porque con su trabajo colaborativo han coadyuvado para desarrollar este evento académico. De manera muy especial, saludo y doy la bienvenida a los docentes especialistas en la enseñanza del inglés de los 3 niveles educativos, preescolar, primaria y secundaria, con la certeza de que su participación en esta actividad fortalecerá su proceso de formación continua en beneficio de las alumnos y alumnas de nuestra entidad. Yo le pediría a mi compañera Pureza que si quisiera hacer un comentario breve antes de iniciar la actividad, cedo el uso de la palabra.
Hola, Gilmar, buenas tardes a todos. Me da mucho gusto estar aquí en esta sala virtual y bueno, pues dentro del currículum de educación primaria está la enseñanza del idioma inglés. A nosotros nos viene muy bien participar en estos eventos porque justamente pues tenemos esta retroalimentación y podemos también manifestar nuestras necesidades para que en un trabajo colaborativo, colegiado, podamos dar respuesta a las necesidades que nos exige este derecho de todos los niños, niñas y adolescentes a una educación de calidad. Y esta educación de calidad incluye la enseñanza del inglés. Realmente en educación primaria tenemos pocos maestros de inglés. Tenemos que hacer un esfuerzo para que todos los niños, independientemente del lugar en donde estén, reciban esta educación de calidad. Y nosotros estamos comprometidos, ya lo había platicado con el maestro Gilmar, para hacer un proyecto que nos permita potenciar con los recursos que tenemos la enseñanza del inglés con aquellos maestros que pues son de grupo en educación primaria, pero que tengan cierto nivel de inglés y si no lo tienen, pues empezar a buscar cómo ellos puedan tener los principios básicos, digamos, para la enseñanza del inglés, sobre todo en los grados más iniciales de educación primaria. Entonces, nos viene muy bien. Gracias por invitarnos a esta sesión, Gilmar. Pues aquí estamos puestos a un trabajo colaborativo de manera humilde y receptiva.
Muchísimas gracias por tus palabras, Pureza. Nosotros estamos en el mismo canal y con la colaboración de todas y todos ustedes como directores generales, seguramente vamos a llegar muy lejos, no solamente en el tema del inglés, que ahorita es la materia de esta reunión, sino en todos los demás aspectos de la formación continua en beneficio de nuestras maestras y nuestros maestros de educación básica. Nuevamente, muchas gracias y pues sin mayor preámbulo, pues, si nos lo permiten, mi estimado Abdiel, pues damos inicio a la actividad programada. Gracias nuevamente por su presencia a todas y a todos ustedes.
Thank you very much. Well, let's switch into English. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a ladder, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. Albert Einstein. Dear colleagues, today we're really excited to have you all with us to develop this webinar named Embracing Multi-Level Students in One Classroom, Practical Ideas for Implementing DI differentiated instruction. We teachers live every day the difficulty to face multi-level classes, and we do have several doubts about how to approach this challenge. This afternoon, we'll have the opportunity to get deeper into this topic. Well, today we want to thank all teachers who are taking part in this event through Zoom and YouTube. Thanks for being here. Also, we want to welcome and thank Subsecretaría de Educación Básica, Dirección General de Educación Secundaria, Dirección General de Educación Primaria, Dirección General de Educación Preescolar, and Empresser ELT for working together towards having better teachers. Now, Ana Laura Martinez, Directora Académica and Regional Portfolio Manager at Empresser ELT, has an interesting information to share with the audience. Please, Ana Laura.
Hello, thank you very much. Well, teachers, on behalf of the academic team of Empresser ELT, we really appreciate you devoting some of your time for this talk. And we also appreciate G's collaboration along with Build and Grow's team. We work together for improving our work as educators every day, and we are very, very good partners and also friends. And also we appreciate the participation of Agora Education, that is one of our distributors, who helped make this meeting happening. So thank you very much, and again, thank you for your invitation. We appreciate this that you allowed us to have this space. And teachers, thank you. We hope this webinar would be very useful for your everyday activities. Thank you, everybody, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ana Laura. Well, in the chat on YouTube, we are sharing a link to answer a form. This information will be very useful for improving the quality of our academic events in the near future. In the following minutes, we will be able to listen to our guest speaker who will talk about embracing multi-level students in one classroom. After listening to Ji Young Ko, Dr. Sarai Cruz Bello will ask her some of the questions you had typed in the YouTube chat. Please feel free to type the questions you consider so that you can get the best of this webinar. It is important to mention that this webinar has been sponsored by Empresser ELT. Thanks for your support to develop this academic event. Please, let me introduce Professor Ji Young Ko. She has an MA in TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages, from the New York University. She also holds an MBA degree from the University of Geneva in Switzerland. She previously taught ESL students and developed the curriculum for an ESL program at public school in New York City. She currently works at Build and Grow as the Senior Global Marketing Manager, teacher trainer, and an academic consultant. She has covered TESOL, co-TESOL, and next TESOL since 2012 as the speaker. So please, Ji, welcome.
Buenas tardes, todos. How are you guys doing today? Good? I'm very honored to have this wonderful opportunity to talk to the teachers in Mexico. And then I think I'm ready. So let's have a wonderful 50-minute workshop. So I'm going to share my PPT here. Oops. Oops. Okay. Now, can you guys see this PPT? Good? Okay, so today, as the director introduced us about this talk, we're going to discuss about this differentiated instruction with practical ideas. I do understand that when you see this differentiated means, wow, do I need to have more in planning or more to prepare to have my class, right? I totally understand your frustration, but as I'm as I traveled around the Mexico and Central South America, I already witnessed many of you guys are already adapting this differentiated instruction. So through this 50 minutes, I want you to look back what you've done without knowing what differentiated instruction is. And then through this 50-minute like talk with me, I hope you can have a chance to kind of like organize your thought, and then you can apply better in your classroom. So let's look at this. Let's see. Let's go to this background of these differentiated instructions. Well, if we have one level of students in our English classroom, that would be amazing, right? Everyone needs to learn about the past tense, right? They already have all the present tense. That sounds like a dream classroom setting, but reality, that's not possible, right? Some of your students are from top notch, like kindergarten, so they already know how to write the simple sentences and then all the phonics and an extra. But some of your students are from public kindergarten. That means they're having trouble to read, or even they don't have like the enough knowledge to read, enough knowledge of phonics to read the word or sentence, right? And then also their personal experience should be different too, right? Some of them, they go to the state for every like vacation, but some of them, they barely have any kind of resources in English around them. And then learning style, yes, they're totally different. Some of your students, they need to say it out loud whenever they remember something. Some of them, they have to sit down and then they write down like 1,000 times to remember. Those are all the different learning style that your students already have in them, right? And as I mentioned, through this, all the differences, definitely their readiness is going to be different. And then based on all of this, their interest and the motivation, yes, they're going to be different, right? So it's really hard for you to embrace all of these students in one classroom. I totally understand that. But before, we kind of ignore all of this part because our classroom designed to kind of fit one system to all of our students, right? So when you remember your English classroom back then, like when I was in elementary school and then middle school, I remember the piece of white paper or endless like solving a problem kind of questionnaire, and then course midterm final. It's all the standardized test format to test our knowledges about what we have learned during the classrooms, right? So that's pretty common. But through this one size fit to all kind of system, we're losing many of our students in the classroom, right? So even though you're trying hard, some of your students, they sit there just a daydream, right? And then some of them, even they don't even want to try. So through this like kind of like look back kind of session, like many scholars and then institute around the world, they want to find the solution. So they want to embrace multi-level of students or different styles of students to have a better achievement in their academic field. That's how this differentiated instruction comes from. So let's look at this slide over here. So this is the agenda that I'm going to cover for 50 minutes with you guys. First, we love to start the concept with the definition, right? So we are going to look into what differentiated instruction is really. And then in order to implement this differentiated instruction, you would understand the principles of it, right? And then curricular elements, and then also students' characteristics. And then as a teacher, we always think about this instructional and the management strategies, right? After we go over these areas, and we're gonna jump into actual strategies and examples that you would be able to see with the video, and then a little bit of lesson plans, and then some game kind of format. So I hope you guys are ready. So let's get going. So as I mentioned, we're going to start with this definition. I love to start with the definition, right? We're such a teachers, right? So this is very teacher side of differentiated instruction. So if you look at this one, comprehensive and flexible process. That includes the planning, preparation, and delivery of instruction. Oh, that's what we are doing, right? We're doing this every week, every month, and then per year, right? To prepare our class and then to deliver the contents to our students. But only thing that a little different over here, address the diversity of students' learning needs within the classroom. Quite interesting. Now we are taking into consideration of diversities in our students. And through this differentiated instruction, as a teacher, we have to take into consideration of who we teach, right? And what we teach, where we teach, and how we teach. Interesting, right? So planning, preparation, and delivery of instruction the same, but we need to think about our students' diversities, right? And then last part, I think we can tap into deeper later during this talk. So, and this is kind of the student side of differentiated instruction. So if you look at this one, differentiating instruction means shaking up what goes on in the classroom so that students have multiple options for taking in information, making sense of ideas, and expressing what they learn. Interesting, right? So before, think about the delivering the information to your students. Well, we have our comfort zone, right? So as a teacher, I'm a horrible like tone deaf. I know that all the Koreans, they're great at karaoke, but not me. So I hate sing a song. So for me, whenever I teach kindergarten, I try not to sing a song, which is not good, right? But for some of my students, they learn English throughout sing a song. They love to sing a song, and then through that, they remember the words. But if I kind of restrict myself to have that activity, then you're gonna get rid of your students' chance to observe that information via sing a song, right? So that's one of the examples. So students, they have multiple options. And then taking in information means the way you deliver the information. And then some of them, they have to listen, they have to read, or they have to move their body around. Or some of them, they have to watch the videos. So you need to think about that way. So they can observe all the information, and then they can make sure that they understand the ideas within. And then expressing what they learn, it's their final outcome. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, I witnessed many schools in Mexico. And then some of the schools, they're doing a wonderful job when it comes to this differentiated instruction. So if I see their like end of the month or end of the semester like presentation, some of the students, they have a PPT to present. And then some of the students, they have a posters. And then some of the students, they have a poem to present what they learn. So I think that's one of the really nice example to differentiate, to express what they learn. So this is one of the examples. So since we have lots of to cover, let's get going. So when we think about this differentiated instruction, I hear lots of frustration from the teachers. I hear you. I understand that because you don't want to sacrifice all your Sunday afternoon to prepare like 6 different group of the students' work, right? I totally understand that. But actually, if you think that way, it could be, but in reality, if you wanna shape a bit of your approach to think about teaching and learning, especially this in this case, well, you kind of understand better, and then you can apply this like differentiated instruction into your classroom without struggling too much, I think. So now let's get going. So here, before we get into actual this differentiated instruction, well, only thing that you need to focus is the essentials. For example, main key point for your students to learn, right? And then also your preparation and then your teaching. So don't worry about those like little branches that you have to plan. I think once you get used to do this kind of activities and then grouping and then teaching in your classroom, it would follow naturally. Like before, I remember my first year teaching, it was horrible. I understand that some of you are very new to teaching. That's very natural. And as you try more ideas and then more like trial and error session, then you would get more skills when it comes to it. And then I think differentiated instruction is the same as well. So one thing that you have to keep that in mind, no one can learn everything in every textbook. That's the key word over here. I know that I work with publishers, so I cannot say, well, books are no good. We don't believe that. But there's wonderful books out there. If I look at English books out there lately, then I wish I could have those books when I was in elementary school or junior high school. But the thing is, if we focus too much on the filling in the gap activities within the book, then you're going to lose many of your students, right? Because filling in the gap is not the learning a language. And then through that activity, yes, they can express some of their knowledges or some of their learnings, but not all, right? So we have to keep that in mind. So now we're going to tap deeper into this differentiation over here. So principles, so these are the things that you have to keep that in mind when it comes to this differentiation. Sorry about this, keep drinking my teas because it's like 8 a.m. over here. So I try to raise my voice over here. So first, well, all students, they have to participate in a respectful work. Well, you need to respect your students like diversities. Well, I taught ESL in the States, in New York City, and I had a coworker who did not have any teaching experience. And then I taught kindergarten through second graders, and then she tried to cover third to fifth graders. And then even though third to fifth graders, they do not have any background knowledges in English, they're covering cognitive level is different from kindergartners, right? So with my kindergartners, I try to color the butterflies and then make a mobile with each one's butterflies and then an extra. And she tried to copy that ideas with fourth graders. Do you think that was a really nice idea? Actually not, because even though your students may have different like level of English, but the thing is their cognitive level is quite similar. So if you want them to participate in one class with a different level, then don't kind of bargain the main like essential point for your students to grasp. So I think that's really important. And also try not to standardize all the goal for your students when it comes to work, because some of your like younger ones, I'm giving you an example with the kindergartners, some of them, they can hold their pencil and then sit down properly for 20 minutes. But some of your students, they barely sit down and then they do not have this fine motor skills. Then those, the higher readiness level group, you can make them sit down and then write down a word with a pencil. But the other group, probably not. Then you can use the stickers. So to check if they understand the word meanings and then an extra. That's one of the differentiated approach for your students, different level. And then number two, teachers and students, they work together flexibly. I do remember my teacher, one of my teacher who loves the timer. I'm very pro to timer when you do the group work, because they need to know how much time that they have and then how can they manage their like given time. But when you want them to understand certain ideas, or if you want them to grasp the main idea, then you need to think about the way to deliver that in their own time pace. I do understand if you have more than like 40 students, it is very hard. Then think about the differentiated the workbook or the worksheets, or you can give them some shorter number of questionnaire that they can solve. That could be one of the differentiated approach to kind of meet the multi-level of students in one big classroom. And then I will give you more examples later on. And ongoing assessment and adjustment, because when we think about assessment, we think about like formal midterm and final. Sit there and then you need to finish those 30 like multiple questionnaire and one essay questions, right? But with this differentiated instruction, you need to learn your students' differences and also diversities. So in order to understand them fully, you have to check how they are with each activities and then each processes. So assessment is very important, that you need to do that like whenever you finish the the activities or group work. So I do understand that sometimes it's very hectic because you have to cover so many students in one classroom. Just beginning, you can have your own rubric for your students. Depends on their level or depends on their, just write down their names and then check if he is following or she's having a trouble. So you can check those elements and then see where they're struggling: reading, listening, or writing, or being cooperative with their peers, or handwriting, or, and then you can add some more those rubrics as time goes on. So first year, you can just start from the simple basic assessment for each students. After you finish the group work or after you finish the each project or everything, and then you can ask some more, and then after a month of those like brief assessment, you would understand your students' differences and then diversities better. And then you can adapt to this differentiated instruction in a more effective way for your students. So let's get going. And then what we are doing is to, that's main reason, is to attend our students' differences, right? So sometimes you get frustrated. I do understand that. I remember one time I had one student who walked around the classroom while I'm teaching. So it was very frustrated for me. But after I talked to him several times, I do understand that he has that anxiety issues. And also when he walked around, he could focus more on what I was talking. So I remember that I had those masking tape, and then I give him some spots at the back of the classroom. So he can walk through those masking tape lined where he could walk around, and then he could have like 10-minute walking time, or you can kind of address that kind of students' needs. And 5, teachers and students collaborate in learning. Quite interesting concept, right? We are the ones who has that key, right? We are the one who tell them what to do, right? I understand that. But the thing is, it doesn't mean that we turn this key to over to our students so they're gonna wearing the pants in our classroom. That's not the concept. So when you plan, set the goal, monitor the progress, analysis the success and the failure together, that means communication. Because with our students are EFL students, they came to learn a language with us. So some of our students, they're in the school system like forever, it seems like it, right? And then you feel like they know lots of language, but the thing is they're new to you, and then they're new with this book, so they need to understand what are your plans, and then what are your goals, and then they need to be able to see the progress within them. And then when you discuss about the success and then failures, do it together. I think that's a really important concept over here. A little different from what we used to think about teaching and then our relationship between teachers and students. And I do understand the public school system in Mexico, and then you might have difficulties to address each of students' goal and then everything. In that way, what I can recommend, start to write a one sentence backside of you with the whiteboard, right? And make sure all of your students understand what they're going to do today. And then through that activities, what kind of thing that they're gonna learn, and then all the procedures of that. And then at the end, what you want them to have at the end of the classroom. That could be filling in the gap in the one page of their course book, or you want them to write a 2 sentences about themselves, or they can write down about the essays about their recent movie that they watched. So those are the things that you can communicate. If you have a smaller class, that would be a great to have a whole class discussion. But if you have a bigger class, you can always make them understand with the clear agenda that is written on the board. And then when you start the class, please address them. That's really important. And number 6, teachers balance group and individual norms. I think this is very important. I know that Mexicans and Koreans, we both are crazy about soccer, right? We are very serious about soccer. And to make a best soccer team, you need to have all the different positions, right? You don't want to have five goalkeepers or six strikers, right? We don't want that. We have those balances in our team. And then you can view your classroom like soccer team from Mexico, right? So because group norms, yes, you have to have certain goals for all of your students to observe, right? But individually, they might have a little differences in their like goal or norms, right? So you can definitely modify that and then think about like each individual's like how can I say achievement. I remember my French class when I was in college, and well, some of our students have certain information about French because they already took French in their high school. But some of our students, they do not have any French background knowledge because they took German, Chinese, Japanese, you can name it, different second foreign languages classes. So I remember my professors in my college, French professor, she was amazing because yes, we have to have dictation every like week. That was like a high school, even though I was in college, dictation. But there's a top-notch students because they already have a French background and then they're amazing. But those students who did not have any French background knowledges, dictation was really hard, but at the end of the one semester, she graded us based on the percentage that have we as a person, the how much growth that we have when it comes to the dictation. Dictation was not the all part of our grade, but she was very like considerate about our differences and then she respected and I still remember her about that. And then as an English teacher, I always thought about her approach because yes, we have top-notch students, but at the same time, we have a students who just entered this like amazing learning a language journey, right? And then you don't wanna, how can I say that, discourage them, and then you don't wanna ruin their motivation or interest because learning a language is not like a highway, right? You put lots of your effort and then time and money and then you grow a bit and then stay the plateau for a long time and then little up and then stay the plateau for a long time. So that's all about patience and then their interest and motivation. So you have to take that into consideration to balance this group and then individual norms. I hope this is clear enough. And then now this is our job to do, right? So when you develop your lesson plan, you can modify this three aspects to implement this differentiated instruction. First, content. Yes, there's a one content, right? But you can think about the way to deliver this content to your students. And also, you can modify a bit of contents to your students. I remember, like, I was an ESL teacher, so I had to cooperate with main classroom teachers in the States. And then grade five, like, one of the teachers in grade five, she was amazing teachers. And then also she was covering World War II with her students. And I remember she differentiated the reading materials because some of her students are from like Mexico, Guatemala, China. So they do not have those like concrete like words background analysis about it. So she simplified the actual contents. So they're gonna grasp the key point of this World War II and the main events. But those students who are English or native tongue, they are gonna grasp the main idea, but at the same time, they're gonna go into those sequence and then more events to cover than an extra. So those are the things that you can differentiate a bit. And then process is very important because activities. Well, I do understand that we are the slave of these activities, right? I think the English teachers are we are most innovative teachers within our schools, right? Don't tell any other teachers. So activities are very important to modify. For example, I'm a dance queen, so I'm gonna just move my body around during my kindergarten like classroom, but they need to learn how to read and then how to write, right? So those are the things that you need to think about it. So activities, some of your students are very visual learners. In that way, you can definitely make them watch the video or video clips that you can find in YouTube, then an extra. And then some of them, they need to read. And also you can definitely incorporate those listening, the audio with your students. And probably it might be really hard for you to have all those activities with the students, more than 45 students. I do understand that. In that case, you can definitely kind of the think about the way that you can like adapt your students differences, because I remember one of my colleagues who is amazing like pre-K teachers, she, whenever I see her phonics class, she used different materials that you her students to learn a sound and then letter and then the combination. One time I remember that she dragged all of her students to out to the playground and then they write a letter and in the sand. It was very amazing. And also sometimes she can use those colored pencils or scented markers. So whenever they smell those scent, they can think about that sound. I think that's a really amazing way to do it. And sometimes if filling in the gap activity is too dull for your students, you can think about the big piece of white paper. I think that's teacher's best friend, cheap best friend. So big piece of white paper, and then you can give them a markers and they can practice their writings in this big piece of white paper, and then they can go to their own like books. I think that's one of the way that differentiated a bit of activities for your students, even though you have a big classroom, right? And then product too. And in this way, your students need to demonstrate and then they need to express what they learn through various methods. So when you have those final exam, yes, it's important to have standardized English test because they need to take those standardized tests when they go to college or whenever they have this English proficiency test. So it's very important for them to get used to those formats. But at the same time, besides that, if you want them to kind of say it out loud or present or do a really nice book report or posters or group presentation as you wish, I think you can include those elements, not for the every unit, but you can do it once or twice per semester. I think that could be very practical and then like realistical in your classroom setting. But if you're a teacher in a really nice private school with less than like 12 students, 15 students, then definitely you can incorporate those various project activities at the end of the unit or every 2 units. It depends on how you want to build your lesson plan or design your lessons. Okay, now, and when you differentiate those contents and then like process and then product, you need to think about your students' readiness and interest and learning style. I think I mentioned this several times throughout this. It would be ideal if we have all the same level of students, but that's not possible. That's not just you guys. Korea, Taiwan, and like Turkey, Egypt, all the places where I have this teachers workshop, they have the same frustration like us, right? Interesting. So you have to have those multi-level of students. That's our destiny, but you need to take that into consideration. And interest, yeah, it would be ideal if our students are all scientists or like writer, right? But that's not possible. I remember whenever I cover like nonfiction readers, it's very obvious. Whenever I talk about, yes, we're talking about, for example, like cars, then half of my students are going to be like this. And then, yes, we're going to talk about the food. And then 1/3 of my students are going to be like this, right? So you need to think about when you teach like English, for example, think about the way to incorporate all those different topics. So I think that's why I witness many schools, especially elementary through middle or high school, they combine lots of nonfiction readers to address students like different interests and also at the same time like authentic information that they can observe and then they can utilize later on. I think that's one of the way that you could do it. And also learning style. Well, I'm not sure it's obvious from my face. I don't like to dance or sing a song. So for me, learning style is very rigid. I sit there and then I have to read and then I have to draw a Venn diagram or graphic organizer to digest what I learn. But for example, my sister from the One Belly, but she has totally different learning style. She has to move her body around. She's very kinetic, and then she's very good at dancing, sing a song, and also she loves to kind of do what she learned. Not she's not into that learning or think about those Venn diagram, compare and the contrast, and an extra. So even though we are sisters, we have this different learning style. And then when you think about your students, yes, they have totally different learning style. But don't get frustrated because what you're doing, you play the audio to your students and then I witnessed many of Mexican teachers, they share YouTube link, the video with your students, and then you guys are very good users when it comes to LMS and then extra. So those are very nice way to start from the beginning. So let's get going. And then here, let's see. And then this is the instructional strategies. So this is kind of the redundant, so I'm going to go over quickly. Learning materials, to think about the multiple intelligence that all our students bring into the classroom. And then grouping, you can think about lots of different grouping, like based on their English levels, their readiness, their learning styles. That's very important. And then learning orientation, think about their interest and then different group. Those are the ones. And then Well, I think the last part is very interesting because, well, some of uh, some of Mexican teachers I observed that they love to start the lesson with the like prompt journal entries, and then in that way, try to give them some more like different like prompt that they can look at. I think that's very important because some of us, for example, some of my friends, when they think about their vacation, they think about their food. And then some of them, they're thinking about their activities. And then some of us, we think about the places that we went, right? So those different like interest and then different like the approach, then you could include more of your students in your classroom. Okay, now let's get going. So I talked a lot. Oops. Okay, so here. I talked a lot about this differentiation, but these are the key points that you have to make sure. You can differentiate contents, process, product to meet your students' readiness, interest, and learning style. Quite simple, right? Now we're going to get into this traditional and the differentiated classroom. Well, I think we cover pretty much everything over here. But one thing that I want you to look at, students' differences. Before our traditional mindset, we think that as problematic. But now we're going to take that into consideration when we do the planning, right? And then I think we cover pretty much everything. So differentiated classroom, ongoing assessment, diagnostic assessment is very important. And we always think about this multiple intelligence and students' readiness, interest, and learning style shapes our instruction. And then time is flexible, and then whole class and then individual learning style is our, we are going to set the different goal as individuals differences. Good. Now we're going to get into this examples over here. So this is one of the examples about how you can plan in your lesson plan. Oh, this is very similar to what we're already doing, right? So if you look at these procedures, you're gonna see all the activities and then what to do over here. So for example, present the aims of the lessons, present the contents, video, PPT, text, to meet our students' different learning styles. And then practice with the worksheets and then jigsaw, make a step book, mime and guess. Also, your students' different learning styles, right? And show and explain each group's work and then error correction, check up, homework, and then closing. So pretty much what we are doing. And then over here, you can include this group session in your lesson plan. So as a whole class, level group, individual, interesting, learning style group, expert group, whole class. So, what we are doing is differentiated instruction, but I need to make sure that I think about each individual's differences when I do this one, right? It doesn't sound that hard, right? So now I'm going to show you the like 3 examples how you can differentiate instruction with your classroom. So this is learning station. I think if you have like smaller classroom, this would be a really great plan for you. So if you look at this one, each group has different tasks to do. So I do see lots of classroom in this setting. But one thing different is they're all doing the same work at the same time, right? But when you do the learning station, then if you look at over here, they're gonna look at the computers. And here, you're gonna sit there with your students and then check if their progress is right, and then if they have any doubts or worries. And then here, collaborated activities. They can do the group work, or they can solve some problems together and extra. This is one of the examples. I do understand if you do not have enough help, or if you're not quite sure if your students can handle this well, then you can start with the 2 groups first, and then add some more and more, and then see how much time that they need, and then how can you group them. I think that's very important, right? It's very straightforward. And learning station, it's very great to meet your students' different learning style, and then also different level of your students. I think through this one, this is one of the examples. They can watch a video, they can create artwork, reading an article, completing puzzles, but one table should be with you. So you have to check your students' progress and then how they feel about these activities. I think that's the key. Okay, let's get going. And then this one is task card. I think that's one of the way that you can differentiate your like activities without having too much trouble with the big number of students. So this is a card. And then based on those lesson goals that you have, they can have one task at a card. So there's a really great benefit when you use this card, because it's one task per card. So they do not have like 20 multiple questionnaire or 20 things to cover at once. So one at a time. So it motivates students, and then also it's like a card game. So they don't think it's another boring English class. So I think it's way that you can include your students actively and also have a really positive effect on your students' motivation. And you can definitely use this task card in a many ways. So sometimes I plugged multiple questionnaire because if they see that in the book, they feel bored. So I use this task card. Or sometimes if you want them to practice their speaking, then definitely you can make them answer verbally when they read the question. And then open-ended card could be a good with the upper level of students. And sometimes I use those task card when they have a review section. So when they come into the classroom, they have those card on top of their desk. So they always pick up the card and then they say it verbally, or they solve the problems and then they check the answers. You can definitely do that. And then you can definitely do as a learning centers and learning stations, and you can have one card per group or as a whole class, as you wish. And then also it's very effective from kindergarten through college students. So I think you can utilize this in many ways. So try one, though, if you don't have enough time to think about what to include, then think about the questionnaire in the book. And then after they listen to the audio or read the book, and then you can give them the task card, and then they can answer that with that card format. I think that could be a little tweak, but it's really nice activities for them. And if you look at these examples, this like task card, they're gonna think about the point of view of this text. So this is pretty simple. They're gonna think about the point of view of this text. And then this one is a little upper level of students. So it's more specific and also more demanding. So for example, let's look at this one. Compare the narrators and the header's reaction to the news that their mother is remarrying. So they need to dip into those texts, and then they need to think about that. And then, for example, over here, the speaker believes in animal rights. Now they're going to think about animal rights, and then they're going to compare their point of view to the speakers in this like writing. So I think this is one of the way that you can differentiate without having too much trouble, even though you have like big group of classroom. Okay, and then this is one of the response formats. So if you want them to finish the work, like this can be used at the end of actually one unit. So you want to make sure that they all cover all those key points. Then definitely you can make them rotate the card and then answer this so they can check their answers at the end. So one of the way that you could do this like multiple card kind of format, I think Scoot is one of the really nice examples. Scoot is just a Q&A activities. So they're gonna have this like numbers on each desk, and then each desk has a questions. So you can use a card, or if you look at this, it's very simple version of it. You can use your sticky notes or just the empty piece of white paper, then you can do it. And then they can answer. And some of the way that you could do with your group of students, they can change their seats. So you have to train them. I know that if you start without giving them rules and then training, then it's gonna be chaotic. So try to do with a small number of students and then do as a whole group if they get trained pretty well. I think that's one of the ways that you can incorporate the cards or just differentiate the instruction over here. So, and now I'm going to show the simple videos, and then I think she did like summarize pretty well about the differentiated instruction. After that, I think we can have Q&A about this like differentiated instruction seminar. So I hope you guys are ready to watch this video. Okay.
Look at all these great volunteers. Go ahead. Yes, nice job. So the impact of differentiation, the students feel successful. They feel supported. They know if something is difficult for them, there's something that's a little more in line with their strengths coming up soon. So it really makes education fun and approachable. I really think it's the most effective way that I have seen to teach.
The vision and the mission of Highlander is to use innovative practice as a social catalyst. We want our kids to be able to do anything any other kid from Providence could do.
We use differentiation all across the curriculum here at Highlander, and especially in the first grade. Although the content is the same, having the stations really allows me to tailor my lessons to each individual group of learners. So how the differentiation looks in my classroom, we start off with a whole group lesson. So let's get our reading glasses on. Let's get the letter part of our brains activated. This section of our curriculum, we have been looking at nonfiction texts. When we're looking at our book today, we're going to be thinking about where we can get information. And then in the phonics realm, we focused on contractions. We're taking two words, and what are we sticking them together with? Apostrophe. Yes, Karen. And then we break off into our small groups. So our yellow group is still learning how to do a lot of our literacy things. The green group is doing pretty well, but has a few things to work on still. And our blue group is hitting all the first grade standards and needs to be stretched. So our differentiation kind of takes two forms. The first is by student grouping, and the second is by modality of learning. We have 20 minutes per station, and there are 3 of the stations. The students will rotate through all 3 stations each day.
So our first station for the...
Okay. So I think that's pretty much it for me to cover. I hope you have a better sense of like differentiated instruction and then practical ideas that how you can apply that into your classroom. So I think now it's Q&A session, right? So here.
Yes, Yi. Hi. Thank you for this incredible speech. I feel very honored today to be the teacher's voice and share with you some of their questions regarding DA.
Sure.
One of the first ones, it says, how can teachers involve students in multi-level classes?
How can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Of course. How can teachers involve students in multi-level classes?
Multi-level classes, I think that's the key aspect of differentiated instruction. So even though we have multi-level of students, we can meet our students' level through the contents differentiation and also the process, which is activities differentiation, and also the different goal of the product, what they have at the end of the classroom. I think that's the key of this differentiated instruction to meet multi-level of students in one classroom.
Thank you, G. Okay, you know what I've noticed is that DI is in complete alignment with the curriculum that the Mexican English teachers work. One of the principles or principles is that the student is the center of our teaching learning process.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and you have taught us that we have to take into account readiness, multiple forms of intelligence, and their interests as well. However, we as Mexican teachers face that we have very large classes. In one class, we have from 40 to 50 students.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a little bit complicated for us to meet all those needs. And one of the teachers' questions is, how could you advise us to do so?
Well, I gave you some of the examples during my talk. For example, well, if you stick with one way to teach, for example, you're teaching a course book, right? In that way, you want them to kind of include all the different methods to deliver the information. For example, it's always good to play the YouTube video before you start your course book theme. Then some of your visual learners, they would understand. And then some of the lower level of students, they need those visual aid. And then after that, they're gonna read the text, right? And then if you want to include more of lower level of students, provide the words before your classroom. I think that's one of the way that they have more like preparation to come to classroom. And then including those reading, you can sometimes cut each paragraph and then focus on the main paragraph to scaffold a bit so your lower level of students would understand. And then also listening too. You can cut some listening part and then make sure that some of your lower level of students understands and then an extra. And also at the end of the product too, sometimes you want them to write down something, but if some of your students are not ready to have those writing pieces, then you can give them some graphic organizer. So they can just fill in those graphic organizer. And then as a teacher, you'd understand that, oh, they get the main ideas and then they grasp the key concept over here. So those kind of a little differentiation would help you to meet your students like differences in a big class. I do understand the realities. So it's sometimes it's hard to do even the group work, but start with those delivering the contents first, and then have a different goal from the each level of students. I think that's the key with the big group of students.
Thank you. Thank you, G. Thank you very much. Another thing that we shared that we shared in common with DI is that the assessment is formative. Use information to shape our practice. So that's another key element that you shared with us. And I think that it is very important and interesting. So another question that the teachers are curious about is what is flexible grouping and how it is used in a differentiated classroom?
Well, grouping is the key because I do understand sometimes, yeah, talk to your partner, right? And then that's it. Or four of the students near you, but before you want to group them, think about their levels. So sometimes if you want to have different outcomes for each group, then lower level of students have a simple task. And then upper level of students have more complex task. I think that's the way that you could do it. Or you can definitely group your students based on their learning style. So some of your students they're very, how can I say that, artist in your classroom. They have to draw whenever they make a book report, right? And then give them more time to have an elaborated drawing because that's the way that they can show their understanding. But give them some time. You don't want to spend 45 minutes to draw, right? So those flexible grouping means whenever you group your students, you have to have those goals or intention why you want them to have in one group. So that's very important. So either it depends on their readiness, like levels, or their learning styles, or their, how can I say that, their interest or motivation. I think that's one of the ways that you can group them. So we used to group our students in a very kind of without thinking too much way, but by doing this, I think you have a different outcome from those group work.
Thank you, Yi. Yes, I love the plan that you show us where it says grouping, but it is grouping by readiness, grouping by multiple intelligences. And I think that's what it makes a DI class. Thank you very much. Another questions that that our teachers are sharing is how can we incorporate DI strategies in distance learning?
Oh, it's challenging, right? We understand that. In that way, well, like group work might be a little intense. In sometimes I recommend you to do a little like pair work so they can talk to each other with the different Zoom session or whatever, and then come back to you. You can definitely do that with the upper level of students, but with this Zoom session, the way that you can have this differentiated instruction means think about the different way to deliver the information. Like you're in the classroom, you can incorporate lots of audio, video, and then also reading the text activities, and then just think about the simple activities they can do with this screen. So sometimes you can make them stand up and then do a little motion and then sit down and then do the writing, show you. Those kind of things are all a little like step of differentiated instruction. So I totally understand that this is quite kind of the challenging like situation that we all face. Then but what you are doing is already incorporating lots of differentiated instruction. So think about the way that you can deliver the different way, the information in a different way, like as I mentioned, audio, video, PPT, or like ebooks. So those are kind of things that you can start from. And then also the student's outcome. You can talk to your individual student. I think with this Zoom session, that would be much easier, right? With the talk to individual students to discuss about their goals and also the different outcomes that they can think of, or you can prepare. Those kind of things are really minor step as a differentiated instruction in this like pandemic era, I think.
Thank you very much. I think that those were all the questions. And okay, thank you.
Anything else? Anything else?
Thank you very much, Yi.
Thank you so much for having me. It was very wonderful. And then I hope I can see your face in the near future, face to face, right? That would be much better. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Yi.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you very much,
Bye.
Yi, for helping us with this wonderful presentation. That will help us to become better teachers by understanding our students in a better way. I'm sure many teachers do appreciate what they have just learned from you this afternoon. Now, I will read the Certificate of Recognition Subdirección de Formación Continua awards you.
Okay.
La Secretaría de Educación del Gobierno del Estado de México y la Subsecretaría de Educación Básica, a través de la Subdirección de Formación Continua, otorgan el presente reconocimiento a la maestra Ji Yong Ko por su destacada participación como ponente en el webinar Embracing Multilevel Students in One Classroom, Practical Ideas for Implementing DI, Differentiated Instruction, dirigido a docentes especialistas en la enseñanza del inglés. Firma nuestro subdirector, el licenciado José Gilmar Solorio Salgado.
Thank you. And now I will read the translation. Thank you. La Secretaría de Educación del Gobierno del Estado de México, through the Subsecretaría de Formación Continua, is very pleased to award the following certificate of recognition to the MAG Jong Ko for her outstanding participation as a speaker in the webinar Embracing Multilevel Students in One Classroom, Practical Ideas for Implementing DI, Differentiated Instruction, offered to specialized English teachers. Firma el licenciado Gilmar Solorio Salgado.
Well, on behalf of Subdirección de Formación Continua, thank you for being with us this afternoon. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.